This is a recording of a live webinar that took place inside Google's Accessibility Discovery Center. Unfortunately, there are some sound issues, so please use the YouTube captions, or you can download the transcript at abilitynet.org.uk/Google-webinar.
Hey everyone, are we live? Wow, we're live. The reason we're saying that is because we've never done this before. Welcome. Welcome to our first outside broadcast. I'm Mark from AbilityNet, Ashley from AbilityNet, Christopher from Google. We're here in the Accessibility Discovery Center in London with Christopher and Ashley. We're going to explore this space. But a couple of quick housekeeping moments. There is chat. We have a live captioner. In Zoom, there should be along your control panel somewhere a closed captions button. If you press that, you'll be able to see the captions. They're also available online by following the stream text links, which are in the details you've been sent. The other thing is that chat is switched off. The reason for that is that chat in Zoom announces for screen reader users and can get really annoying. So we use the Q&A. Well, apart from mentioning that the chat isn't working, the Q&A is something for you to use, please. We're going to be having a chat with Christopher about the ADC, find out more about what's here. You'll be shown around the space. But we're really interested in your questions and making sure that we hear from you. So in a moment, I'm going to be leaving these guys to have chat. I'm going to start to check in on the Q&A. So please do ask us questions. Anything that can't be answered today, we will convert into an FAQ. We'll take the recording from today's session, we'll turn it into a blog and reflect on the key points, but we'll also pick up the questions that have come in that haven't been answered and addressed. Ask Christopher and Ashley to answer anything that you've asked which didn't get done in the session. So all of that is really about trying to get you guys to join in, tell us what's interesting. As we're going around, I'll be looking at seeing what you say about what we're looking at. We're not going to spend ages going around because that's it's usually a fairly long session. We will be back here sitting down and having a chat. So think of any questions you have, and we'll bring you back in at that point. So at this moment, I'm going to get up and wander off and go and start patrolling the Q&A. I'll leave these guys to have a lovely chat. So,
amazing. Thank you so much, Mark. Welcome, everyone. Super excited to be at the Google Accessibility Discovery Center. The Toronto has a really calming environment, kind of calming vibe. Yeah.
It's the hippie Californian in me.
Okay. I was wondering if you kind of, if there was any kind of appropriation or input from the community, I guess, in designing it. It really has that calm feeling when it came in.
It does. We partnered with the ADC was started by our ERG, the Disability Alliance. So it's disability-led, disability-founded, and we had people of the neurodiversity community, and people who were anxious, dorks like me came in, and we decided we didn't want this to feel like a lab. So we have purple carpets and curtains and lamps and toys and magazines. We don't have any double-painted glass intentionally. We didn't want it to be a place that feels stressy. And that's my California term, stressy.
Right.
And I think we did a good job. There's always things that we can do better. For example, the aircon was a bit too loud for my taste. And it does distract some. So, but this is the whole accessibility journey. You deal with what you have and you try to make it better in the future.
Amazing. Yeah.
Now you won't be able to stop hearing the air.
So I realized I've got to introduce myself and also to introduce you. So yeah, I'm Ashley. I'm a consultant at AbilityNet. I spent the last 10, lying, getting a bit older, 15 years co-creating technology, doing inclusive research. This has included working with some of the best minds in neuroscience at UCL to make apps for people living with dementia, to read again, government projects that get tested. And I'm just really super passionate about this topic. It also helps that I've got like 15 aunts and uncles who are all neurodivergent, so it makes Christmas very fun. So I come from a very lived experience, but also from really learning and understanding and working with these at the same time. And yeah, do you want to tell us also a bit about yourself? We're very distracted by the amazing room.
So I'm a hack. I kind of fell into this by accident. You talked about your uni, so I'll talk about mine. I studied classical music. I wanted to be an opera singer. And my mid-20s, I realized I wasn't very good. But I was born and raised near Cupertino, California. So within a year of the decision to join tech, I was at Apple. I was there for 10 years. I worked on the first iPod, the first iTunes, the G4 Towers, D5 Towers, Final Cut Studio. I spent a couple years at Sony making phones, a year at Disney making games, and 12 years here at Google. And it was here at Google where I discovered accessibility. What happened is my product, I was the lead technical program manager for Google Play Music, and my product wasn't accessible. This is about 10 plus years ago. We had a test engineer come into one of our meetings. She turned on voiceover, and I heard, "Bup, bup, bup, bup." I guess, what's that? She said, "Well, this is Google Play Music for someone who's blind." I said, "Well, that's stupid. How do they use this?" And she said, "They don't. That's why I'm here." And literally, that was my introduction into the space. I never thought of it. I never heard of it. My grandparents were just old. I'm just bad at reading things. I'm bad at remembering and processing information. I didn't know anything about deafness or dyslexia and that stuff. But I couldn't look away. In a couple months, I volunteered to take on accessibility for the Google Play suite of products. Then I went and played in VR, but we don't talk about that. And then last 8 years or so, I've been doing accessibility on the central accessibility team, now called Products for All. And my first gig was to help make all of Google's products accessible. So we helped make accessibility teams across the company.
Wow.
And then in mid-2020, I turned 50 and had this epiphany that I wanted to have a change. I wanted to, sorry, there's a door opening and it distracted me. I turned 50 in the middle of COVID, realized I needed a change, but I didn't want to leave Google. I didn't want to leave accessibility. So I pitched the idea of using the European Accessibility Act as a tentpole to move to Europe. Well, my boss said yes, her boss said yes, her boss said yes, and we moved in 2021, 10 of us on the plane. And then the ADC was one of the first things that we did, opened in December of 2022.
So I really love, there were two things that struck me there. One is it feels like your kind of passion for music and then coming into the tech space and then seeing that other people couldn't access that. Probably a bit of a desire of like wanting them to do that. Like being able to access those sounds has really driven that kind of purpose and mission. And I love that because it's that diversity of, you don't even need to be a tech person to come into tech. You can come from this music background and bring so much kind of like value into that. I'm really curious, what's your kind of vision for the ADC and how is it being used at the moment within Google and also external?
So for me, the ADC is a place where we within Google learn how to make new products, learn how to make the products we have more inclusive, more accessible. We created the pixel magnifier out of conversations with R&IB. And in fact, Robin Spink said, "Hey, that pixel camera is great. You should make a magnifier out of it." Oh, yeah. But he kept on asking, and we put together the business case. We brought it to the Pixel team. They said yes. So we built products out of here. We learned how to make our other products more accessible. We've done research for many different things, from internal products to Android and Chrome and stuff like that. So we've made our existing products more inclusive and more accessible. But then there's a whole opening up for tours a bit. So like I said, we've been open since December 2022, so it's been about 18 months. And we've had almost 3,500 people from outside Google come in for tours. Everyone from local borough 50 years to Keir Starmer and the shadow government. We've had Japanese mayors all the way to Malaysian IT departments. We've had universities, businesses, charities. AbilityNet's been here a couple of times. But it's all about teaching about the technology, teaching about inclusive design, teaching about these tools that if you don't know it exists, it doesn't help you. So it's all of these things all wrapped up in a beautiful purple bow.
So yeah, there's two things there. It sounds like the collaboration element, which can be used internally within Google, and then being able to have these conversations with R&IB to bring people's voices into the products that people develop into the voices of the products in a very cool, calming room.
Yeah.
And then also I can see the words here, transforming awareness into action. And so a lot of people on these talks, is it to do with the awareness into action? Are you raising awareness through these kinds of tools? What's your kind of goal with that?
Sort of D, all of the above.
Amazing.
I don't want to just shut off an avenue if it has value. So sometimes, like with video games, I'll show you in a bit, this was about destigmatizing disability and a bit of a wow factor. Oh, cool, you can play a video game. Kids love the video games. But when I go to have a conversation with businesses, they want to know about the AI tools that they can implement and the AI tools that can help their community, their staff, make them more efficient and better at the job. So we've had HR departments from all over Europe and the UK. How do we make a place better? We've had a company that puts on events. How do we make events better? So it's been really, really broad about who is participating.
Sorry, I got distracted there as well by my colleagues. But yes, so being able to cater the different people's kinds of some kind of word there, like they're not their needs, but something around that. You want to be able to create that sense of awe for children coming in, for businesses coming in who have a particular interest in what accessibility can add to their team. So kind of really piquing people's interest and awareness. So I guess when they go away, they're like, we need to have more of this stuff in our company. Why don't we have more of this stuff?
So much of accessibility these days are compliance based. It's what are the laws that I have to meet to sell product into a place? What do I have to do to not get sued? So what I want to do is I want to bring some of the cool, innovative stuff into it and talk about not just the compliance thing. In fact, we never talk about compliance.
Yeah.
What we actually want to do is talk about the innovation and the delight and the empowerment that a thoughtfully designed product, an accessible product can have in someone's life. It's not just about going to work and getting a job. It's also about going to have a date and playing games and doing your own makeup. All of these things matter. And one thing that you'll see when we do the tour is we don't only have Google Kit here. This is actually about the larger conversation of accessibility. We have Microsoft stuff, we have Apple stuff, we have Samsung, we have Sony. Many of these were donated to us because they appreciated the message of inclusion and accessibility. They wanted to be here. So we have this opportunity to teach. It's a place for us to learn, but all of it all starts with the mantra, nothing about us without us. You can't build something if you don't know it's broken. And who can tell you what's broken? It's the person with lived experience.
And that's one of the most important things for us, particularly at AbilityNet, in terms of the inclusive research practice. It's that being able to go beyond compliance. And like, from my experience, having these conversations with users, it completely challenges my assumptions about what's possible in a product, even if it's not a product for accessibility. Having that perspective, it allows for new feature ideas that's actually going to solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. It's bringing that innovation and bringing that perspective, because I don't know what I don't know. And having people with lived experience, being able to come in and share or co-create, give feedback in whatever way they can, it really pushes products to a whole new level in my experience.
That's why we do.
So I'd love to have a tour of the center and play some stuff.
Sure. So first, I want to talk about the sign that's right behind us.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an important part of the larger conversation.
Can I ask you this? Of course, it's not sure sounds as far as it could be.
Hello, everyone.
No, that would be much too loud.
Okay.
Just put it on here. We weren't sure about the tech.
Welcome to live programs.
How's that going, Kelly?
So what we have here is a sign that we designed blind could play with it and understand it, but I forgot to say how big it had to be useful. So it's
Sounds gone.
it's big.
So let's turn this one off.
It's big, and well, they're still going, so but I'm going. So are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So this design ended up being too big.
Okay.
Because no one person really understand that this giant triangle throws DNA.
Yeah.
This context is really difficult to maintain. But now
That
but
goes
we
for
already
everything
have
else.
we already have but over here is the smaller size. This is exactly the same.
So interesting.
It's exactly the same size, but in a shape, a size that's much more fit for purpose.
Yeah.
So for me, this is a really interesting example, metaphor for building for accessibility when you're first getting started, like being in a room. You have an idea, you have the idea, you have the intention, you build it, you mess it up, so you fix it. And then you do it again. Intention, build, screw up, fix. And again, at some point, you figure it out. So you don't make as many mistakes. But if you get to the point where you know you can always make a mistake, realizing that there's a process that you build. It's progress over perfection. Because there's no such thing as perfection. There's always going to be someone who's going to be left out, despite the best of intentions. So don't make perfection that goal. You want to make having a thoughtful process where you have the opportunity to listen, take feedback, and improve. That's what you want to get to.
So interesting. I mean, first of all, I absolutely love that you kept the error on the wall. I think so many people get worried about making mistakes and they try and kind of hide it as if maybe we're not being as optimistic, we need to hide that mistake. And then the other thing that comes to mind is I've forgotten my question to be quite honest. It will probably come back to me in a second.
Oh, really? But that decision to lean in on the mistake is intention. It's relevant, it's important because a lot of people are afraid.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm afraid I'm going to do it wrong. I'm afraid of fear. So what you do, it's like, well, Google's going to screw up. Of course, we're going to screw up. So in fact, this is the third ABC this is the first ABC of 3 that we have open. Every single one has these 2 signs.
Oh, okay.
Because this story of progress and perfection, the story of an iterative nature of design is critical. So we lean into it. So the whole world is going to know about my mistake.
So it reminds me actually of when I was first building a team in technology and we were working on co-creation disability. It took me ages to realize that they were terrified when working with people with disability of how do I interact? How do I do this? Am I going to make a mistake in my interaction? Am I going to ask a question that's going to offend? And it started to create quite a lot of barriers in terms of the research, and it took quite a lot of time to build their confidence so that they felt like it's okay, like these ask people for feedback. And I'm just wondering if you found any barriers yourself to educate, or maybe people being afraid of that kind of progress or perfection.
I think people expect there to be a magic bullet. So telling them, disappointing them that there's no magic answer, you're not going to have a solution, it just is a process that you need to build, and you need to be okay with it. It's probably the most important thing. You're going to offend someone because words change from person to person. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to have a problem with the technology or the service or whatever it is. Someone is going to be left out. So how do you handle it? Do you get defensive or do you get inclusive?
I love that. One of the things we're really trying to do at AbilityNet at the moment is to bring organizations along the journey with us in terms of building the inclusive research. Because that way they get to learn, they get to ask questions, they get to interact with users, and they can kind of build that confidence and that safe space. So they can then go away and do more inclusive research themselves. They'll see us making mistakes and realizing that it's not the end of the world.
Toys. So as the campaign, you're going to see magazines, literal toys, books, lots of different things that represent different kinds of expression of people, because people aren't just disabled. We are intersectional. We have all of these things that represent us. So why shouldn't space that's talking about inclusion be inclusive? So we literally have things in different languages, in Braille, in large print, small print. We even have that stack of Vogue magazines that they did. Really fun stuff. So what we have here are 3 stations, each of them designed by an excellent charity called Everyone Can. They are in Manchester, and they use video games to assess people with disabilities, but also use video games to upskill them. Because it's a lot more fun to play a video game than it is to do exercises. So we were so impressed by with what they're doing.
Oh, they're using it as a therapeutic tool. Video games. Cool.
So here is it's a Tobii eye tracker. I'm not going to sit because of time. I'm not going to sit and demonstrate because I get distracted and I want to win. We're using the Tobii eye tracker, and the game is called Dirt 5. It's from Steam. It's the mainstream game that everybody gets to play, but they added the ability to remap buttons. So we have these spaces here, so like left, right, forwards, and back. These spaces are the buttons.
Yep.
You see a little blue blob going from side to side. That's the focus of his attention. So when you see the blue blob go to the right, the car's going to turn right. When you see the blob going to the left, it turns left. Well, what this is, it's just a cursor, really. So what this kid is learning is how to use a cursor, how to use a mouse. And he's developing fine motor skills for a mouse. So he can go do Excel. He can go do Photoshop. He can go do iMovie. He can go to TikTok. He's learning how to use a computer just like anybody else, but within his own constraints. And he's so good at this game. He's other than me, a year and a half later, he's beaten every single Googler on this game.
There's something here that really resonates with me. I used to work as a carer of wide range of disabilities, and one of the real challenges I had was people's assumption that because some people weren't able to communicate, they almost weren't there. And being able to use something like this, for me, it has this opportunity to break these assumptions.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it has the opportunity to really break and challenge people's assumptions and to give access to one. So much insight and wisdom. Anyway, it just struck that. I really wish I had something like that when I was doing my care.
There's other kind of tools, and the important thing to remember is there's no one tool for everybody. Everybody's needs are going to be different, and that's what accessibility sometimes is that ability to personalize experience to meet you. For example, this game over here, I'm just starting to do this moving. This is a really simple game, poorly named, Ding Dong XL. But what I love to do is I love to show all the different kind of switches. So there's more than one way to press the button. I can use my head. I can use a big red button. I can use a wobble switch. I can use a proximity button. I even use a foot switch. Poorly, clearly. Way too used to play football. But all of these are legitimate ways to interact with your computer. And what you learn how to do is use the computer the way that you have to. So for me, switch access is magic when it comes to allowing someone to use a computer, but everyone uses a switch in a slightly different way. And here are 5 different switches. And we're using Microsoft's Xbox Adaptive Controller. And this is intentional because this is an excellent device when it comes to bringing the person to the game. So that's what everyone taught me is games bring people together.
Yep.
But the AT brings the people to the game. So that AT becomes the bridge between people and the community.
Absolutely.
So that's why I was so moved by what they've done. And it taught me, and this has literally impacted the way that we do our work here. Last game I want to show you is actually quite funny. I'm not going to demonstrate it because I'm truly rubbish at football. But Sony was jealous. I say this with tongue in cheek. Sony wanted it to. They liked the fact that we had Microsoft's Xbox Adaptive Controller, and they wanted us to have their access controller as well. So they actually donated a PS5 and the controller. Now I can make me embarrassed, aren't you? PS5 and a controller
I'm scared. Look at his skills.
what skills? Clearly, I'm American. But this friendly competition amongst rivals. I mean, Microsoft and Google and Apple, we're all making amazing technologies, and we're all doing this together. And we support the community together well, but we always want to compete on whose technology is best.
So there are two things that come to mind. One is the difference between inclusive design and universal design. People need to use things in a different way. Sometimes we design things that can work well for everyone, but sometimes we need these personalizations of actions. And my other question, just kind of going around, what's the impact you've seen when you showing people these pieces of technology? Has it changed anything in their perspective?
It's been remarkable to me. We've seen people change their product lines when coming from here. We've seen there's a school who said that it impacted literally how they do their job when it comes to STEM students. So the impact of introducing this idea of inclusive design, this idea of an iterative approach, progress over perfection, is really seeming to have a powerful impact in how people are treated, how people are thought about, and how people are supported. So there's a couple of really fun stuff over here. Two in particular I'll show you. One is this steady spoon, pretty straightforward. It's just a cantilever, but it helps someone with like arthritis being able to feed themselves. So regardless of how I hold my wrist, I'm able to keep the food on the spoon and can feed myself.
Oh wow!
So simple, 70 pounds off Amazon. But what's really cool is L'Oreal, the makeup company, has taken this idea of a tube that you hold. They're making a makeup adapter, but they're adding some liftware tech, which is a little bit of AI, and it measures a sense of tremor. And they're using this to help people who have tremors be able to do their own makeup. So it's quite exciting watching the technologies evolve over time.
It was what came to mind as well. People with certain visual spatial connections, dementia as well, being able to course correct like that. Of course.
Yeah.
And it's great to see that it's transferring to other people's ideas of how they can make their products better and more inclusive.
You have an inspiration and you move with it. So over here is where we start to see some of the Google games. I think we've seen this at this point has been Google. We have a very simple AAC. This is the Stephen Hawking's $30,000 one that's from Intel. This is literally just one that's running as a Chrome extension. But there's one thing that we have that I think is a really important tool when it comes to communication. It's called Look to Speak. And what this is, it's an application that runs on Android, and it uses a little eye tracking from side, and you look side to side to bisect the list. So it might get confused. I have all of you looking, so I'll try.
All right, I'll look away. Oh, wow, okay, so you're able to communicate with your...
Welcome to the ADC.
So you can
That's
have
amazing.
it say the things that you want it to. So you would go in and put the words in that you want, including swears, because swearing is an important part of creativity
And expression.
And expression. Because we're not using AI to decide what the words are, we're just using AI as a select. So if you use YouTube, we won't say the F word in YouTube because we're using AI to figure out the words, and we don't want to broadcast that at a YouTube scale. So it's very selective when we do these things.
So is that something you could use to benefit inclusive design or like co-creation or inclusive research or anything like
Yeah,
that?
if you have someone who can't speak on their behalf, they can do this. We just recently added a version where we're using pictures like emoji, so you can actually select emoji instead of words going from side to side, and you can decide what the emoji says because my 50-year-old daughter uses skull in a very different way than I use skull.
Yeah.
So that matters a lot when it comes to communication. You wouldn't want to have to say skull. No, you want to say what you want to say. So that the extra level of it's not just a picture, but it's my version of the picture for me is really that delight part of the inclusive design.
And most icons that I see that look angry, I'm wondering if it's weird, and it gets me very confused.
I sometimes get confused by the way my daughter uses the emojis.
But I love, I mean, you were saying earlier about the bridge between technology and being able to communicate. And I think that's just a great example. Include users' voices in design of products, because now we've got that tech.
That they can say that.
Yeah.
But also, if you're trying to design, you also need to make sure the person can hear with one. So this is a station on hearing technology. And the Samsung device here got frozen, but what we have is a really great application called Live Transcribe. Of course, live demos. All right, we're not going to do a live demo there. I'll just demonstrate it here on this phone. Live Transcribe is an application that runs on Android, and it supports 80 different languages and provides real-time transcription in conversation. And if they get it wrong, or if you ask a question, you can pop up a tray, type it in. So now you can have a conversation, even if you're deaf and nonverbal, as long as you can use the keyboard. You can communicate.
Oh, that's really interesting. For things like running focus groups and being able to have the different access needs into a product.
Yeah. So this it runs on tablets. I don't know what happened there, but it runs on a phone. Yeah, this is an application you download off the store. But a really neat feature that sits beside of.
Could I speak to someone now in Chinese?
That's Google Translate, and yes.
Great.
We also have a feature that is part of Android that provides real on-device real-time captions of audio streams. So say, for example, here's a podcast. And what we see is just, and of course you can change the color and font however you want, but we're creating these captions on device. This isn't coming from the podcast provider. So this also works with videos that you would shoot. This also works with audio notes and stuff like that. So we're using the operating system here to raise the floor of accessibility and inclusion, so that audio streams that allow you can have access to captions. Now, for example, music or audiobooks don't like that, so we don't do that. So we customize that space.
I'm interested, the colors that you were using there, the yellow and black. When I've done research with dementia and reading challenges, those were the colors that ended up being, for example, dark background and yellow.
It's a strong contrast.
It is a strong contrast. But yeah, it just occurs to me that it's that signal to me that can tell us it's been inclusive design. Yeah, it's really.
Or we just screwed up and learned.
Or you've just screwed up and learned and iterated many things in science, which you also did.
I'm someone who learns by making mistakes. So I wanted to show you a similar kind of feature that we have to live transcribe that sits on the browser. So you go into the browser settings, you go into audio, and you turn it on. It's a feature called Live Caption. It's built into the browser. You don't have to download anything else. And it will create, similarly, captions for you. Unless I have another demo goblin. Oh, I had demo goblin. I don't like demo goblins. But it also works on the browser when you're not being demoed. It provides a window that pops up, and you can change the color and font and everything. So now you can use the web browser to provide for you captions.
Wow.
And transcripts. So now someone who's deafblind who uses a refreshable braille display can actually have access to videos that haven't been transcribed.
Wow.
So for me, this captioning technology also provides a huge benefit to a larger community than just people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And going into there is when we start talking about the spaces that we have, the technologies we have around vision. So we have, for example, this is running Google Chrome, the Chrome OS, which is like Chromebooks. And we have all of the different kind of features that you would expect from a thoughtful operating system. But you can look here, we're using the dock magnifier to sort of make it easier to see. But we have so many features that are just built into the operating system. Nothing extra to download, nothing extra to install. And we have a really useful feature for me. It's called Select to Speak, where you just highlight something, and then you just listen to it.
Google for Education helps students and educators to customize their tools and create inclusive learning environments.
I'm curious, how did you come up with the different variables that people were going to need to support their reading?
Inclusive design. So, because we learned from people telling us what's useful for them or what's been helpful.
So doing like a lot of usability testing, getting people's feedback.
Lots and lots and lots. This started off as we've added multiple features because of feedback doing user research. So last thing I want to show is I want to show a really cool feature that's called guided frame. For me, this is an excellent tool and represents when you do the fun stuff right. So for example, live transcribe, which I couldn't show you, but this feature called guided frame were both designed from hackathons. So they're hackathon winners that were so popular, the application or operating system teams picked it up and made it real. So what this is, it uses real-time feedback, spoken feedback for someone who's blind or vision on how to take a picture.
Oh, wow.
So I'll just turn it on.
Talk back on. Camera.
Oh, that's so nice to be able to
Flash.
communicate.
Focus. Switch to front camera. Take photo. Button.
Let's take a
Double
picture.
tap to activate.
Oh, let's.
Actions available. Use tap with 3 fingers to view. In frame.
You see how it blocks it?
Yeah.
One face. To fit everyone in frame. Move your phone left. In frame.
Wow.
3
Come back,
faces.
come back.
Cropped. One face. To fit everyone in frame. Move your phone left.
Move your phone left.
In frame. 3 faces. In hold for photo. 3.
Now I'm going to move it a little bit,
And in frame.
and it stops
Down
because
cancel.
your face, you might not know, but your face has been
frame.
blocked.
3 faces. Hold for photo. 3, 2, 1. Photo taken.
So now all of you had a selfie with
In
Google.
frame. 2 faces.
The one thing I really love about that is the ability for people to be able to communicate their experience through digital, but also sometimes when I'm doing things like co-creation and inclusive design, there might be an expression or a feeling that someone has, and they might not be able to explain it with words.
Yeah.
And again, using like bits of technology where they're like, okay, I can feel the sensation and the tactile, and this is what it is, and to be able to communicate that gets incorporated into the product. Yeah, it's completely building those bridges, I think, as you say.
What really struck me is when doing the research, one of the feedback subjects told us, "Yes, I'm blind," and people always ask me why I want to be able to take a selfie, and it's because I like cute outfits. I want to share them with my friends, but I don't want to have my mom take my picture.
Mm.
It's the empowerment. It's playing video games with your friends. It's putting on your own makeup. It's taking a selfie. It's not just about job skills. It's not just about school skills. It's about all of it. And who are we to say whether or not you can swear or not? What matters is you can do what you want when you want.
100%. And I mean, it's the theme that comes up through the research time and time again is people being able to have confidence in their life.
Yeah.
But also being able to have the independence, as you say, not having to have your mom take a screening shot with you, or even having to have your mom come out with you when you want to join your friends for activities, because now you've got the tech to use it. Sorry, Mark, you've nearly sat in your seat there.
No worries. First of all, this is fantastic going around, but the sound's not great. So the loudness I'm speaking is what I think I need. That's what I've been trying to gesture, just so you know.
Okay.
And a bit slower.
Okay.
Okay, that's what we're getting to feedback. I'm just responding to
Of course.
We're back. We saw a brilliant tour around. We talked about lots of different aspects of what's going on there. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions that have come off the Q&A. A couple of them are things just to say to everybody. There's a lot of people asking about the things you've seen. What are they called? Which was that gadget that did X, Y, or Z? So obviously, we'll provide a whole list of that as part of the playback after it. So there's a few things here about what's the name of the transcription application.
I can answer these just really quickly right now. So the application that we're running on the tablet, that was called Live Transcribe. It's what I showed you on the phone. It's real-time transcription in over 80 different languages. There's also the feature called Live Caption, which is just built into the interface of Android. Nothing extra you need to download, and you just need to turn it on.
Great. Somebody's asked about speech impairment, and I know that's particularly relevant for that. So could you just explain that? Because I know there's a story that goes with that as well.
Yeah, so we have an application called Project Relate, which was released when we launched the center in 2022. And what this allows is someone who has a non-typical speech, whether MND or whatever, to create a dedicated voice model of their own voice. So you sit and read in 100 phrases, 150 phrases or so, and we will generate for you a voice model that knows your voice. And then you can dictate into your phone and copy paste, or you can have it repeated what you just said, or you're going to trigger a Google Assistant command, like take a picture or call my mom.
Nice. And there's some questions in here really that linking on to the next bit is how do you take the disability and the insights from this and convert it into the products? And I know that's where your stuff's coming in, Ashley.
I mean, that was one of my questions. So
yeah. So I think probably, I think that's really the next theme. So really, where does this awareness? You have the idea of the awareness into action. I know that's your questions, actually, really around the actions and how that plays out within the internal teams. Where does that start from before the centre opened?
Sure.
And what do you see as the impact in terms of the change and the awareness being developed into action?
So I think, and I need to, before we go on farther, I want to say we are not perfect. Our process isn't perfect. We have some products that are in better shape than others. This is, I think, going to be true of any large organization. But we really have as a commitment to make these things better. So when you do it right, when you have a new and bespoke experience like us, when we created the magnifier, we partnered with the community, in this case RNIB, to build the user journeys. We call these user journeys. These CUJs, what are the most important CUJs that we need to add to the product to make it meet their need? So you start with the code design. And then you do testing. So user testing with products, either literally just a test of does it work, but also does it work well. And then we listen to the community after we ship, because we have free support for any user with a disability on our products. You go to g.co/disability support. And that's another channel that gets feedback into the team after you ship, because it's important that you listen to the community after you're done, because you may have tested with 100 people, but there's 1.3 billion, and according to WHO, hundreds of millions of people who are blind, hundreds of millions of people who are deaf, hard of hearing. No sample size is going to hit everyone. So having that final feedback is critically important, and that it's up to each product team to fit in the fixes that make their product better based off the metrics that they're using to move forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think from our experience with AbilityNet as well, like starting with the co-creation and discovery process, amazing. But sometimes people have the assumption that you just do some co-creation and then it's going to work. But having that like testing after, as you say, validating that assumptions, and then when it goes out as well, continuing, it definitely the way that we found really creates that process throughout, making sure that it's right for everyone.
And you don't need to do this for everything. Like if there's a WCAG requirement that you need to have your hit target be 48 pixels, whatever your internal systems are, you don't need to co-create that. You know what you need to do. This is most important. And the fact is, you're never going to find enough people in the community who are able to help you test everything. So you want to be selective in terms of when do you want to reach out.
Yeah.
And you also want to compensate the people for their time, their experience. You don't want to ask them for free. So not all companies. Exactly. So if you're a small company, you're not going to be able to afford to do 100-person user research on everything that you're doing. You need to be thoughtful of how you engage with the community. So use legislation when you can, guidance and guidelines when you can, and connect with the community when you do something interesting.
Interesting. A part of that process as well, I mean, is you're kind of raising for a company, it's when you've got a small number of employees or a particularly small budget. There are still ways of kind of injecting a little bit of research and feedback across that. You're putting on an accessible online feedback form to be able to take that feedback, to be able to prioritize it into the product development. But then also sometimes time and time again, I feel like if you just spend a bit of time doing a bit of a co-creation workshop, you probably save a lot of money in the long term, because you don't have to iterate continuously to find the right thing to be able to get it more correct at the start, but you won't get it.
And yes, absolutely. And I want to just add a light caveat to what I just said before. You may not need co-design for something that has a WCAG guidance. You still want to test with the community, because someone who's a screen reader expert will always use it better and different than someone who isn't. So you may not need to co-design with the community, but you definitely need to test
the results with the community, because the usage of the tools, the usage of your application, even if it's simple, may not be what you expect.
That's such a valuable point. Mark,
I'm interested. There's a couple of questions about the processes. So when you're looking within Google, because this is something I'm not particularly familiar with, I realise, is where are the decisions being made within product development? And are they different teams? Are you continually trying to educate different people? And how does the centre give you that sort of that stepping stone when you've got these multiple stakeholders? I think a lot of people know that it's not just one person. You need to show them a spoon that wobbles, and then suddenly every product's going to be accessible. There's a whole bunch of other people involved. And how does that look for you in terms of internal engagement and the impact you're having, and some of those things you're juggling, really, those different stakeholders?
Yeah, it's two spoons helps, not just one. More seriously, the way we do accessibility at Google, because it's such a large and distributed company, both in terms of products, but also in terms of locales, it's more than a hub and spoke. It's a hub to a spoke. So I'm part of the central team, which is Products for All. We do accessibility, we do product inclusion, internationalization, really trying to look at what does it mean to create a product for everyone. And then we collaborate and build tools and expectations here. And we also create our internal guidelines for what does accessibility mean for Google. And then we partner with the accessibility teams that I mentioned when we first started the conversation. I helped build accessibility teams around the company. We have accessibility teams inside Google Search. There's an accessibility time inside Android, inside Chrome, inside these organizations. They have experts in the technology, experts in their stack, and they work with the teams inside their organization, because you need to understand the team priorities. You need to know the language. You need to know the culture to really have influence. So at Google, it's a distributed hub to a spoke. And each team is able to decide what they need to do, but we have certain expectations that products be accessible. But they get to decide, and they get to decide when and how. And there is a process, an annoying process they would have to go through what they need to make an exception. Sometimes there are exceptions, and I think it's important to realize that processes are imperfect, technology is imperfect. You need release balance. So we have this process that gets really onerous, and so people don't like to do it, but we have it if we have to. But the ADCs, what's been really fun about these ADCs is that we brought in hundreds and hundreds of people from Google just here into this place, and we get to excite them and inspire them with technology and with inclusive design. We have the one in Dublin, and we have the one in Zurich of this open style. We also have the ADCs in the US, in Mountain View, New York, which is more internally focused, internally facing, teaching Googlers how to do it. So we have a culture of accessibility where when a person comes into the company, you're taught about accessibility, and your starter project always has some accessibility parts of it. We have a cadence where we talk about accessibility. We use GAD. We use our internal accessibility and disability inclusion month. And then we also use IDPD, so I tell the story internally. But these ADCs end up being great opportunities to talk about the impact on the business, and the impact on our products, and the impact on our relationships with everything from governments to the community.
So you mentioned right at the end there, you started talking about some of the other stakeholders. Who's the hardest people to persuade? Who do you wish came in here more, or went away and did something that they don't do?
Middle managers.
Okay.
So the way we started to build up the influence is we started by empowering the people on the front line, the designers, the SWEs, the testers, the product managers, and help them be successful and build up momentum. And then we start building up reputation, and then we eventually get a meeting with the senior vice president of an organization. And we try to learn the language and the motivators and drivers of that person, so we can build a pitch that can influence them to make it something that they want to invest in. And they tell their leads, and they tell their leads, and they tell their leads. And by the time you get to that second or third hop, these are the people that have to decide between this lawsuit, that feature, and this $1 million deal. And they're the ones who really have the hardest job. It's great for a senior vice president to say, we should be the best in the world. When you get to a couple layers down, how do you actually do it? And that's really the hardest part of these organizations, is the people who are making the day-to-day decisions of this over that.
Right, interesting. And I was just thinking about that in relation to the European Accessibility Act as well. And this is more than just a cheap advert for the next webinar that we're running. But
It's
I know that's something that's right in the middle of your work right now, because I guess that brings all of those questions together. You know, it brings a focus to them to say, okay, this new thing has sprung up, irrespective of whether you're at the top, the middle, the bottom, or the front line, whatever.
All of us.
You've got to make this thread come together. I guess that's the challenge with that. But does it help bring it into focus? Is what I'm wondering.
Absolutely.
Answers the questions a bit quicker.
It really does. So thoughtful legislation has a great motivating factor. The interesting question is, does it have teeth? And then how many teeth does it have? Because here in the EU, each member state has the ability to set their own agenda and set their own fines and fees and fears. Like Ireland is threatening 6 months jail time, whereas in another member state is doing €300 fine. The expectations for each are going to be different, and the severity of the problem for each is going to be different. So how do you sort of rectify both of these at the same time? So getting the message, this is something that we need to do, understanding what it actually means to the products that you sell, and then always there's the risk question. I've never been in a business where there hasn't been a risk question. What's the risk of it happening? What's the risk of it not happening? Or what's the risk if we do it, or what's if we don't do it? That is a really interesting question. And this is true whether it's the ADA in the US, the AOA in Ontario, or here in the EAA. It's the risk versus reward. It's how important, how hard, how much time, all of those things matter.
Great, thank you.
It's one of those things as well that I noticed a lot of businesses it becomes their awareness because of risk, and then they start their accessibility journey. And then when they start doing kind of get more into it, they start to see, oh, there's actually a lot more here that we could be doing in terms of being able to design and being able to make our products better. And like, oh, started as a risk journey, it brings it into their awareness. Like that. It's actually maybe the weighing up of decisions now is like, this feature would have a lot of value that's just been coming through in our research. But yeah, that's one of the things I see.
So two more questions. We haven't mentioned the people who do research within Google specifically, and whether this is, because certainly from Ashley's point of view, inclusive user research is different to user research in a sense of there being some deliberate effort to include particular voices and particular opinions. Do you see that particular group of stakeholders being influenced by the space? Are you seeing that shift towards being more inclusive in user research? Is that an element of what's?
I'm lucky that since starting and getting to where we are now, we've actually built up some of those muscles. We've built up an organization whose job is making sure we have connections with the disability communities, or communities of color, communities of LGBTQ. There's someone whose job it is to make sure we have the opportunity to do this kind of inclusive research. And it was primarily US based, but since this is open, we've actually been doing it here as well. So I'm proud for the products that we've been able to influence, be able to create, like the magnifier. We're getting ready to do some new things on the guided frame that I showed you. Just do some new research on that. So it's really neat seeing people inside Google from all over the world recognize that this is a center of excellence when it comes to inclusion.
Nice. Yeah. I've got a random question here that I just really like. I thought of a way of twisting it around. Will we ever see a physical keyboard on a phone ever again? Somebody saying because they missed theirs. I'm just wondering, under what circumstances would you be running some testing and someone says, but I would use it except it hasn't got a physical keyboard on it. That user loop that would create. I mean, how far outside the scope of what you're currently working on can user research really influence? I guess is the question.
So very rarely do we do sort of open up the world and tell me everything that you think. They tend to be asking a certain question or two. So I don't see any major phone manufacturing doing a lot of research on keyboards because one, BlackBerry had such a spectacular life, and you always assume it's a BlackBerry. But I have to say, there is we were talking about this phone earlier.
getting ready, there's a cool thing that I saw on Facebook because I'm old. It's an e-ink display, but it has a physical keyboard on it. So clearly someone thinks there's value to it. It may be 600 pounds, but it's something interesting, and it caught my eye. I used to work for Sony Ericsson, and we actually had phones with keyboards on them. So I completely understand the value of the keyboard. I was so much more efficient, but it's expensive and it's mechanical, so it's one more thing that can break. So knowing what it takes to build a phone, I can understand why they don't want to have it, because it is so expensive. And if the person wants that much, you can always just buy it.
Cool. There's a couple of questions here about how people can keep up to date with the ADC. There's also a burning question that people have about how they get here. Yeah. There are lots of people who are in the wrong country, but for the ones that are within flying distance or train distance, what's the process? And also probably is thinking about the scale of demand that you have. How is that shifting over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so when it comes to being able to visit, if you're in London, you email us at ADC London, ADCLONDON.
We can put these figures. We'll put these details in.
Yeah. So there's email addresses that you can do to contact folks either in Zurich, Dublin, or London, and you can have it scheduled a tour scheduled. Each of us have what we call Community and Individuals Day, where we bring just random people together, kind of like an accessibility yanta, and we bring people together and do a tour. And sometimes it's really fun watching people go off and go do something together. So there's that. So anyone can come in. You don't have to have a relationship with people. And how do you keep track in terms of what we're doing? I will also include this in the notes that go out. But we actually have a quarterly email that goes out, a quarterly video that goes out that highlights all of the accessibility features company-wide. That are user facing and that are worth knowing about. So we did one, I think, just last week or 2 weeks ago about this past quarter, where we talk about everything from Android to Chrome to Workspace, and we try to be as thoughtful and comprehensive as we can.
Great, thank you. So, as we'd expect, there is I've got a long list of questions here. Sorry, the reason I'm looking down here is because I'm obviously looking at the list. One last question.
One last question. And it's, what's at stake for companies that don't prioritize inclusive research in their design and development processes?
You're not going to make the right stuff. You don't know what you don't know, as you said. And if you only design products for people that look like me, tall, white, oldish, you're going to make products that only meet my need. So if you ask someone who doesn't look like you, someone who doesn't think like you, someone who doesn't act like you, you're going to hear new needs. You're going to be able to understand how to make your product more resonant. It's becoming more and more business imperative, because if you have 15 companies all doing the same thing, the one that is more inclusive, that works better, is going to be the one that most likely survives. So it becomes this opportunity to have something that gives you a step ahead of everybody else, because you're looking at the broader view, not just the little MVP thing, which a lot of places to start with. You actually want to take a broader view, because our friend Rami Garawa says, if you design for the edges, you get the center for free. I love that. And it's really true, because I'm going to be able to use something, that is very helpful and thoughtful design for someone who has limb differences. Because I use my phone with one hand. I may not have a disability, but I'm sitting on the tube, one arm on the ring, and the other one trying to send an email. I'm in a situation where I have to have one hand for me to be useful. So if you have a product that doesn't work with one hand, I'm not going to use it.
I really love that example. Thank you so much for that.
Great. Well, we're pretty much bang on time. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for coming. We have had some issues with the sound. We will do our best to document this in the transcript, so there will be any of the details and information that when we go through the transcript, we find isn't clear. We will tidy that up. There's actually another final point here, really, was, we didn't get to see something a bit more detailed. So, could you show me what that was? I think what we'll do is we'll talk to you, Christopher, about maybe just sort of document some of the highlights that we've seen. I think that's what people see. But I would say that the point about the space that I've seen and I've learned in knowing you and working with you so much time is the awareness. Obviously, for us in this world, in the accessibility world, we're often looking at actually the thing that's in front of it. Somebody's actually asked where they can buy the glasses, for example, because they want to know. But I do think a huge impact that you've had with the centre has simply been drawing people into the room. It's become famous. It's become something people want to see. It's become a destination. And quite apart from what's in the room, I think it's amazing that it's having this impact because it's created something where accessibility is quite cool. We don't necessarily see our world that way all the time. And obviously, particularly talking about stakeholders within Google and elsewhere, drawing in people who aren't in our community, who don't talk about accessibility, who don't really see this stuff every day, don't really understand the implications of it. Just that first step for so many people, I think, is really powerful. It's amazing, and it's wonderful that it's here and that you're doing more of it and it's growing and improving. So congratulations for all the work that I know has gone into it.
It is a team effort.
Hans is here somewhere and all the other people involved. Yeah, more of the same. So, thank you very much.
Thank you both. It's been fun.
Thanks. Very inspiring.
Thanks. Well done, Ashley.
Thank you.
Cheers, and we'll see you all very soon for the next webinar. Thank you for coming.
Bye.